Yo, so over the years, as I've been learning game development, my real passion for making games was survival games. Um, and you can't really make a survival game without an inventory system. I mean, you definitely could. There's definitely ways you could go about it, but most survival games, you're gonna need an inventory system. I'm gonna create a series where I create a really in-depth inventory system with heaps of features and all this stuff and crafting and everything you can think of. I'll fix all the bugs and I'll walk you guys through it. In this first episode, we're just gonna make an inventory UI with some basic items. We're just gonna build the foundation basically. It's not gonna be really complicated in this first episode. It might get more complex as we go on. I'm gonna try my best to explain everything. I'm not a teacher, so I'm gonna give it a crack, but I want to help you guys out with this because I was never helped as a kid. That's a lie. I'm kidding. I was helped a lot. Yeah, so we'll just jump right into this then. First thing you want to do is go right click, go UI, click canvas, and just hit 2D and press F so you can see the full thing. A lot of the time I just like to switch to the game mode and I just start building inside of here. So we'll start with an image, make sure it's centered. So you just click on this, hold Alt, and you can see how you can move it to different parts. You can make it as big as your screen, but we don't want that. We just want it in the center. Center's fine. Make it size that you want. We'll just do 500 by 500 for now, maybe 500 by 350. Nice little cube we got there. Now we want to create something called a grid layout group, which will basically just everything we put underneath it. I'll just make this black so you can see. Will be put into a grid so we can see, and you can add things like spacing and padding and all this stuff. So I'm just going to make these maybe 65, and we're going to do 10 spacing. Padding will probably be 10 as well, so they'll sit in there nicely. And then I'm just going to do about that much. And I'm just going to resize this until it fits in there. There we go. Okay, so we have a nice little inventory grid thingamajigo going on. So I just changed the color because it looks nicer. Alright, so we want to add our actual inventory script, so we'll just go add component, inventory system, new script, create and add, and then we'll double click it. Alright, so now that's loaded up, I'm just going to delete all of this for now because we probably won't need it. First thing we want to do, actually, we're just going to make our item class first. So we're just going to create another C# script, and we're just going to call this one item class. Now we're going to make these, the items will be scriptable objects because I can't think of any other way that would be good to make a bunch of different items than a scriptable object. Like, come on. Delete all of this, won't need it. We'll just use public sprite for now. This will just define our item icon. And that's almost it for a scriptable object, literally. The only thing I'm gonna do different is I want to have heaps of different types of items. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to create a new folder in here. I'm just going to call this item classes. And I'm going to put another C# script in here, and we'll just call this misc class for miscellaneous items. Now this one will derive from item class. So this is now technically a scriptable object. And now all we want to do is in here, we want to create a public virtual misc class get misc return null. So all we're doing here is creating a bunch of different types of scriptable objects that use these properties essentially. And what we're going to do to be able to get a misc class from an item class to check if it's maybe a misc item or a tool or all sorts of stuff, we'll just go public override void, and there it is right there, get misc. I'm just gonna get rid of that, and we'll just go return this. So now whenever you call get misc on an item class, it will either return null, or if it is a misclass, it will return this right here. So what we can add to misclass, just to show you how this works, I'm just going to add public float something, that'll do. And now we want to make it so we can actually create this scriptable object. So we'll go create asset menu. Menu name equals scriptable objects slash misc item. And then we want to do the file name as, let's do it as misc item too. So now when we right click and go create, okay, something didn't work. It didn't save my item class. Okay, save my item class now. Go in here, go create. What the hell is it doing? Okay, I'm gonna restart Unity because that should literally work. There we go. Okay. Alright, so now when we go back into Unity, we go create. We will see scriptable objects up here. Misc item, I'll just call this wood for now. And you can see it has something there. Now what's cool about this is if I make another C# script, we're going to call this tool class. And delete all of that. Do this as item class as well. Inside item class, we're going to create another public virtual tool class. Get tool. There we go. It's already done it for us. Now we go here and go public override void get tool, and then we will return this. Oop. Return this. Okay. Now if I make another thing inside here, like I'll just make this a float called damage. If I create I gotta add an asset menu to this. Hang on. Give me 2 seconds. Just copy and paste this one. And we'll call this one tool item. Tool item. Alright. Go create scriptable objects, tool item. Now you can see we have another thing. I'll just call this like sword. And you can see they both have 2 different variables, which is what we've put here. This one's damage, this one's something, but they both still have item icon, which is from the original item class. So we can just add custom things for certain different items. For now, I'm just gonna delete that. Delete that, just for the sake of simplicity for now. But we have them now. So, the next thing we want to do is create a public class item slot, public game object slot, public item class item, and public float, and we'll just call this amount. So these will be the slots that our inventory has. So we will assign the slot that it actually correlates to, and then the item and the amount that's inside that slot. So now we've just got to make a list that we can look at. So I'll just make it public for now. We'll create a public list called item slot, and we'll call this inventory equals new list item slot, and then we have to serialize this system.serializable, otherwise we will not be able to see this inside the inspector. So now that we've done that, if we go back to Unity, you can see we now have a list here with all of this. So we can assign an item in there, an amount, and the slot that it correlates to. And we can do that for the whole inventory. Now all we got to do is set up all of these slots inside this list so we can control all the items inside of our inventory. So we are going to create a public game object for our slot holder, which is everything that holds all the slots, and we'll create a void start. So now we're gonna set up all of our slots basically. So we're going to create a for loop. Int I equals 0. I is lower than inventory.count. I plus plus. That's the 1. And we want to create item slot. Slot equals new item slot. So we're just creating a new one of these inside of here, and then we're just going to set the parameters. So we'll just call this slot. Now we actually want to do this as our slot holder dot transform dot child count, which will be, just to show you, this is our slot holder, and it's just going to loop through all of the childs, which is every single slot inside of this. So it'll loop through all of them. So now we'll just set this slot to slot holder dot transform dot get child I, which is the one it's currently on. We'll set it to the game object, and then we will add this slot to this inventory list. So now when I hit play, it should set up our whole inventory once I assign our slot holder. This should fill up. There we go. So we now have 18 slots, and they all correlate to each slot inside of there. So we can now give them items and everything. So for now, we can set this to private because it doesn't need to be public anymore. And we're going to start showing the items inside of the inventory. So how I usually like to do this is I create a void update inventory list. So if we give an item slot list to this, so we'll just create item slot list inside of there, create a for loop, I equals 0, I is lower than inventory, no, we want to do it to the list dot count I plus plus. So that'll loop through the list that we give it, and we're going to be giving it this one, so it's going to loop through all of the slots inside of there. So now we need to update the actual slot. So just to make this easier, we're going to reference our slot inside the list for easier access, and then we're going to get the slot transform as well, which is the game object inside of the slot that we assigned on startup, which is this here basically. So then we can put the item inside the slot. So now we want to create, we're just going to create a public game object called item slot. Now we want to create a slot inside of our inventory. So if we go over to our image here, and we add a raw image inside of this, yeah, raw image, want to go like that, and we will just add text inside of there, import the TMP essentials so you can use it. I'll just go like this, I'll make it black, we'll do like 20, set it to 0. And then I'll just give it a bit of padding on the right. So this will be where our item icon will go. So I don't have any item icons at the moment, and this will be the amount that's inside the slot, so that'll go there. It shouldn't wrap like that, but when we add max stack sizes and stuff, that won't be a problem. So I'll just set it to 64 for now, just so you can see. But that'll basically be what the items look like inside the inventory using this here. So I'm just going to call this item slot. I cannot type. And just make this prefab. Should be it. I'm just going to rename this to amount. just to make it a little bit easier for myself. Now we'll get rid of that, go on our inventory, and we want to assign the item slot into there. So now we can start actually creating the item slots. Now, when you loop through the list, we're going to instantiate. How this works is, wherever I put it inside here. We're going to instantiate this behind. We're going to instantiate this object behind each image. And then we're just going to change the icon of it and the amount to what corresponds inside of that list. So we can see it inside the inventory. That's essentially how it's going to work. So what we're going to do for that is, first we're going to check if there is any of those already in there. And we're going to destroy them. So then we don't just stack them up on top of each other and it looks really funny. And then we're going to check if the item slot actually has an item. And if it does, we're going to create a new item slot. And we're going to instantiate item slot. And we're going to parent it to slot transform. And then we're going to set new item slot dot. So the component on the new item slot, which is the parent, we will get the image sprite of that, and we'll set it to our item slots item dot what did I call it? Item icon. So we'll set it to the item icon that we have, and then we'll just go new item slot dot get component in children tmp dot text asset. This would be the amount, the text asset underneath the parent that is the amount, and then we'll just equal that to our item slot dot amount dot toString. That should basically be it. I'm just going to create a void update inventory function that we can call update inventory list inside of it, because there's going to be more things that we're going to have to update at once, and it's better if you can just call this. So once we've done that, we can just update the inventory at the end. And all we do, update inventory list, and you just pass it this list here, and it will update that list and all of its slots. So that should work, but first, we can't actually add any items to the inventory system. So we're going to create another public class, and we're going to call this starter item. And we're just going to go public item class item public float amount. And then we're going to create another list up here. Public list starter item. We'll just call this starter items. New list starter items. Yep. And then after we've basically created all of our slots, we're going to loop through that starter item list. Items.count I plus plus, and we're going to add each item to the slot. So I'm going to create a function for adding items only because we're going to be doing that a lot, and it would make everybody's life a lot easier if we didn't have to write it every single time, and we can just call an add item function where we can pass in an item and an amount. Okay, so to add an item to the inventory, we want to check through all of the slots and see if any of the slots already have the item in it, and we're just going to add the amount to that slot. So we're going to check that first. So we're just going to go create a for loop inside the inventory. And then we will check if the slot we are currently on dot item is equals to the item that we gave in, then we are just going to go inventory, and the slot that we are on, we're just going to amount, we're just going to plus the amount that we've given it, and then return, so it doesn't continue on. Now, if that item doesn't exist in the inventory, then we're going to create another for loop and check if there's nothing in that slot, and we're going to set, let's go like this, we're going to set the item in that slot to be the item that we gave it, and we're going to set the amount to the amount that we gave it. So that should be adding items to the inventory done. And then all we want to do after this is update inventory. So once it adds an item and updates it, which means we can get rid of it from there. And all we got to do now is go add item, starter items, i.item, and then starter items, i.amount. That's it. Now we should be able to start seeing items appear in our inventory. Just for the sake of making it look prettier, I do have icons that I can use from a game I am working on. So I'm just going to steal the iron bar, I'm going to steal the rock, the rope, and the wood icon. Just going to set these all to sprites and put them inside their own folder. Just so we're not getting mixed up. I'll take the items and that prefab out of there too. So I'm just going to delete this tool for now. And we have wood. I have a wood icon. I'm going to create a rock. Give it the rock icon. We're going to create rope. Give it the rope icon. And then we're going to create, what was the other one? Iron. Give the iron icon. So we have 4 items in the game now. And it's just like that. That's all you got to do to add them in. And then you just go to your start items. Press plus. Add your starter item with the amount that you want to put in there. We'll do wood. 54. Do iron. 647. And then we'll do rope. That'll be 75. Now when I hit play, we should be able to see the items inside the inventory. Okay, never mind. Okay, so the problem is that we're returning before we even get to the update inventory tag. So we just want to update inventory right before we return. And now we should be able to see our items inside our inventory. Okay, we see 1. Okay, so the problem is that our item slot has got a raw image on it, and this is trying to get an image. So all we got to do is swap this out from a raw image to a normal image, and now it should work. There we go. Okay, so we can see our 4 items inside of our inventory, and they have created their item visuals underneath the slot, so it's parented, so you can see them inside the inventory. So now we're going to get very basic item movement going, where you just click and you start dragging it, and you click in another slot, and it places it in there. So in order for us to do that, we're going to have to create another script called slot class, which will go on all of our slots. And I'm just going to add that to all of these. Now on slot class, we want to add, after our mono behavior, our iPointer click handler, and it's going to have a red line under it. You just want to hover over it, go show potential fixes, implement interface, and then we have our function in there now. Now all we got to do is we have to make our inventory system a static instance. So we'll go public static inventory system instance, and then we'll go void awake instance equals this. So now we can access this script from anywhere in the game on any script. Now, before we can make our slot class work, we need to implement a way to drag items. So the best way to do that would just to be create a item slot and just call it drag slot. And then we want to create a game object, which would be our drag item, which will be the visual of what we're actually dragging. And I'm going to create another void underneath this one called update drag item. And we are just going to go drag item dot set active to if drag slot has an item. So if drag slot does have an item, it's going to set it's going to be visible, and if drag slot doesn't have an item, it's not going to be visible. And then all we do is check if drag slot has an item, drag item dot get component. It's literally just the same as this. I'm just going to copy and paste this straight in, set it to drag item, and then we'll just go drag slot dot item icon and drag slot dot amount dot toString. So that'll update our drag item, and all we got to do is put this inside of our update inventory void. So whenever we call update inventory, it will update our drag item. Now we want to create two functions, one for starting dragging and one for stopping dragging. So I'm just going to collapse all these, and we're going to create a public void start drag, and we're going to add a game object in there, which will be the slot object that we're trying to start dragging on. Now I'm just going to create the end drag one here as well, end drag, and we're going to create another void. Well, it's not going to be a void, this one's actually going to be an item slot, where we're going to find the slot that the object is in. So we'll pass in the slot, and we'll loop through our inventory system. Inventory.count I plus plus. I is lower than inventory.count. And then we'll go if inventory dot slot is equal to the slot we gave in, we are going to return that inventory slot. And if that never happens, so if we loop through the whole list and we don't get a slot, so that slot doesn't exist in here, then we're just going to return null. Because we have to, if we don't return null, it's not going to work. See? So we got to return something. Now, to start the drag, first we want to find the slot that we're trying to start the drag on. So just call it slot equals find slot. See, there it is. Find slot dot slot object, which would just be that we're giving it in. And then we check if the slot doesn't have an item. No, we want to check if the slot does have an item. Then we set the drag slot dot item equal to slot dot item, and drag slot dot amount equal to slot dot amount. Now we want to clear the slot originally, and we could just write, we could literally just go slot dot item equals null and slot dot amount, but that takes forever, and we're going to have to do that a lot. So I'm just going to create another void called clear slot, where we just give it our item slot, and this will just do it for us. So slot dot item equals null, slot dot amount equals 0. So now we can just call clear slot from here, just give it that, and there we go. That'll clear the slot, and then we want to update the inventory like that. Now it's almost the exact same inside of here, so I'm going to copy and paste this, but all we want to do instead, so we want to check if the slot doesn't have an item, and we're going to give the slot the item from our drag slot, and then we're going to clear our drag slot instead. So that should be able to start drag and end drag. Now we just got to call those functions from our slot class. So all we got to check here is if our inventory system dot instance dot drag slot dot item. So if we don't have an item in our drag slot, we're going to start drag on this slot, which is the game object, and if we do, we're going to end drag on this game object. Now that should hopefully be enough for us to be able to drag items around inside the inventory. So we're going to want to create our actual drag item visual. So we'll just use our drag item slot, set this to be the same size as your slots, and then you just want to assign this to that. Now I'm just going to disable this for the sake of making it look nice. Now if we check inside our inventory system, I'm just going to uncollapse that. If I click, okay, so you can see I've clicked on that and it's gone into our drag slot. You can see it here. If I click on another slot, you can see it now moves over to there, and you can do that with these items. Now we just got to make the drag slot follow our mouse so it looks pretty, and all we have to do for that, it's very, very simple. We just create an update method and we just go drag item dot transform dot position equals input dot mouse position. That's it. So now the drag item is going to constantly follow our mouse position. Now an issue that I had before was actually I'll do a demonstration. If you click on an item, it's going to follow your mouse, but you won't be able to click it back into a slot. That is because it thinks you're clicking on the drag slot. So the raycast doesn't actually make it to the slot you're trying to click on because there's a sprite right in front of it. So all you got to do to fix that is literally just turn off raycast target on the image and go down on this one, extra settings, raycast target on that. And now your raycast will just go straight through it, which means you can now click and drag items. Just zoom in a bit so you can see. That's it. Basic. If you click on another slot, it's not going to work. And if you click on an empty slot, it's not going to do anything. So you can just drag your items around inside your inventory. And yeah, that's very, very basic. Now, in the next episode, we are going to do split stack with right click. Things like if you're holding a stack and you right click onto an empty one or one that's got it in there, it'll just like place one. If you put two stacks of the same item on top of each other, they'll add up. And then we're going to add max stack sizes too. So if it's at a max amount, it won't let you put it over there and such and such. So that's enough for this video. Hope you liked it. Hope it was easy to follow along. This is my first one, so I'm trying my best. Yeah, no, I hope you enjoyed, and come back for the next one. See ya.